welcome back everybody to our latest episode of The Nest. And as promised, we are back following a very exciting Super Bowl 57, where we see the Kansas City Chiefs defeat the Philadelphia Eagles 38-35 last night to win their second championship in the last 4 seasons and their third championship overall. And today we will be discussing that matchup and basically kind of looking ahead to the 2023 NFL season. And joining me is Pratik Sinha, Ujan Talukdar, and yes, this is not CGI. Rohan Venkatesh is actually next to me.
Yes,
How
I'm
is
here.
everyone doing?
I am here in person in the great state of California. It's good to be out west with my great friend, and what better time than to recap a great season. It was a great game last night. Pretty high scoring. It was pretty high entertainment value. It's a lot of back and forths, but you know that's kind of what football throws at you. So I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on the game and on the season as well.
Yeah, I will say that, it was a great end to the season. High scoring, 2 young quarterbacks. We're pretty much into the new generation of quarterbacks now at this point. I think Philadelphia started out fantastic, so opening drive touchdown. I think that just set the tone for what was to come. I mean, you didn't expect to see a lot of punts in the game. Although we did see the longest punt return in Super Bowl history. That being said, Philadelphia had the 10-point lead when Rihanna took the stage, and that went away by the time the fourth quarter started. So, it wasn't exactly a back and forth kind of game, but it was close throughout, and the ending was questionable, but we'll get to that, right?
I guess if you're losing, you want either Rihanna or you want Lady Gaga on your side, because they'll wipe away your. It was a great halftime show, though. But anyway.
Yeah. So I mean, first of all, I think Patrick Mahomes. I mean, this was incredible. I mean, playing with a high ankle sprain, he was 21 of 27. Threw for like 182 yards, 3 touchdown passes, didn't get sacked at all, which was very impressive against that Eagles defense, which was actually had the 3rd highest sacks ever in NFL history in a season. So, I mean, I think Mahomes was excellent. Obviously, Travis Kelce was big. Juju Smith-Schuster was huge. But I think what it kind of just showed overall was, besides Kelce, the rest of Mahomes' receivers are decent players, but he doesn't really have any other superstar wide receiver per se besides Kelce. So I think like what this showed me was like Mahomes is capable of now elevating other players who are decent or good to making big plays. I mean, the last 2 touchdowns, he threw it to Kadarius Toney and then to Sky Moore. Those were his last 2 touchdown passes. And essentially he was doing this with a high ankle sprain. And I mean, that 25-yard fourth quarter run is just legendary, especially considering he had a high ankle sprain, is probably struggling to probably even walk like afterward. Like, it was very impressive. And I just sort of can't help but draw some parallels between Mahomes and Tom Brady in his second Super Bowl, because that was against the Panthers. And in that game, it was a back and forth game. And that also came down to a last second field goal, which Adam Vinatieri hit. And Adam Vinatieri, like Harrison Butker, also missed a field goal early on in that game. So I think overall, there was actually a lot of parallels. I mean, you can sort of count John Casey on the Panthers kicking the ball out of bounds and giving the Patriots the ball at the 40 to the defensive holding penalty, which was a little controversial by James Bradbury on Juju Smith-Schuster, which basically allowed the Chiefs to kick a game-winning field goal with like 8 seconds left in the game. So I thought overall Mahomes was great. I thought Jalen Hurts was outstanding. I mean, 3 touchdowns. He was
the better quarterback despite losing.
I mean, threw for 304 yards, a touchdown. I mean, that pass to AJ Brown was extremely good. Yeah. Devontae Smith was excellent. AJ Brown, I mean, Devontae Smith had 100 receiving yards. Brown had 96 receiving yards. Both showed up. And I mean, Jalen Hurts had 3 touchdowns on the ground, 70 yards. He was unstoppable when it came down to those 3rd and 1s. Like, the Chiefs were just terrified of those 3rd and 1s, 4th and 1s, because they had no answer of stopping Jalen Hurts on those sneaks. I mean, he played great. Obviously, the one blemish everyone's going to be mentioning is that fumble, which got returned by Nick Bolton for a touchdown. And I actually think that was probably one of the biggest, like, kind of game changers, because it was 14-7 Eagles. And I mean, I don't think the Chiefs
didn't seem big at the time, though.
Well, the Chiefs defense, it was probably big, because if the Eagles score a touchdown, it's 21-7, or at least get a field goal 17-7. And I mean, Mahomes sort of struggled initially, but he figured it out just like he did 3 years ago against the San Francisco 49ers.
I mean, Mahomes pretty much did it all, right? I mean, I kind of figured, that that he found his passing targets and he had a variety of them. And even though Travis Kelce does tend to be his favorite target, he was able to diversify his targets this time. And they were able to mix up, the Chiefs were able to mix up the running game and the passing game. And of course, Mahomes had that epic run, basically outrunning that Eagles defense with that bad ankle. So either that shows the resilience of Patrick Mahomes, or I guess it really just shows you how the Eagles defense didn't really show up. I mean, in a lot of ways, there are things that you could have expected and a few things that kind of surprised me. Now, I did kind of expect this to be an offensive explosion on both sides, and that sure enough did happen. We did have one of the top offenses on both sides with the Eagles and the Chiefs. We all know that Jalen Hurts is a great quarterback. So is Patrick Mahomes, and surely enough, it did turn out to be a high scoring contest. Now for the Eagles to score a lot and for the Chiefs defense to give up 35 points essentially. Now that seems a little high for me, but it's not entirely out of the ordinary because the Chiefs essentially they've been middle of the pack all season. So you kind of expect them to concede to concede a few scores and for the Kansas City offense to really pick it up along the way. What did really surprise me though in this game was the extent to which the Eagles defense really didn't show up. I mean, I especially if I had to really put it down to that one play when Patrick Mahomes outran the Eagles defense with the bad ankle. That's just got to be embarrassing to watch if you're an Eagles fan. I'm sorry to say, but on plays, I mean, you can't give up plays like that and expect to essentially stay competitive. I mean, they're lucky that they did stay competitive, and I'm sure if a few things had gone the other way, and if the Eagles managed to win, there would have been a lot of things pointed to on the Chiefs side. For example, Harrison Butker missed field goal. That probably would have been the talk of the game afterwards had this gone the other way. But it is what it is. And despite being one of the top rated defenses, it didn't show up yesterday, and that's kind of what makes the Super Bowl beautiful and interesting, right? Because it's kind of a wild card, and we're here seeing the Chiefs lift that Lombardi Trophy for the third time, second time for Patrick Mahomes, and he's got 5 more to match you know who, and he's got a long career ahead of him. So I think we all know where this is going.
Well, you talk about how the Super Bowl is a beautiful game, but I'll tell you what was not beautiful yesterday, and that was the field, which was absolutely atrocious and embarrassing. Like every other play that both players were on both sides were like slipping over. Like Travis Kelce, when he scored his touchdown, if you actually watch closely at the end, he actually initially slips. He catches himself, but he slips after catching the touchdown. It was horrible. And that the NFL spent $800,000 on this grass from Arizona for the last 2 years. I mean, if this is the quality, I am this is very disappointing. In the biggest game of the year, it's dangerous for the players. So
both sides have to play with it, so it's not really a competitive advantage for either side.
Yeah, but it's still unacceptable to have, right?
Well, okay.
It could contribute to injuries. I mean, that's the thing they say in Washington, FedEx Field. And the Commanders, formerly known as the Washington football team, and all, like they always have injuries because their field is so bad. Like it like ends careers. It's like you got to play against the conditions and you got to play against the other team. So yeah, that was disappointing on the biggest stage to have like a field quality issue. Yeah, and I think that may have had something to do with Mahomes like aggravating his injury as well. But like you guys said, it's just super impressive how he was able to play through it, because yeah, he proved himself. It was a heroic performance by him, and yeah, kind of excited to see how far he can keep going, and maybe he'll catch you know who. I have doubts about how long his style can last because he's not a pure pocket passer, but let's enjoy him while he's there. So it was impressive.
At some point, he'll probably have to kind of limit how much he runs per game as he gets older. He has to protect his legs and everything to kind of preserve his strength going forward. Right now, he's still pretty young, so he can recover from injuries easily, but he's gonna have to change his style a bit, like going forward.
Yeah, he's only 27, right? So he's got plenty of time, but yeah, he'll have to adapt. If he wants to play into his 40s, he'll have to definitely change some things. But yeah, super impressive performance.
Yeah. So I mean, overall, like I guess let's just talk about this dude.
Yeah, I was gonna.
Oh yeah, go on.
No, I was just gonna say. I was just gonna add on to the field quality. It just seemed as though like the main issues. Well, actually, two things. Number one, it was an issue. I think Kansas City played in Arizona week 1, and they supposedly brought up the issue, but it seemed as though that was never addressed. That's number one. Number two, you can see the like kind of the divots in the grass, like when even on like the regular broadcast camera, like it's not like the turf where like you'll see like the rubber pellets come up. It's not that like and I just felt like every time there was the common places I saw the most slipping was like on those painted areas, like where they have like the Super Bowl logo, the NFL logo at midfield. Those were the common, and I would even say that Pacheco slipped like after the Kansas. I believe it wasn't the tying touchdown, but I think when it was like in the third quarter, he ran into and then in the back of the end zone, he lost his footing there. So, I just think, I mean, it was a great game, but there are some like issues that I wish were addressed prior, but it's not going to take away from what was a great game.
Yeah, definitely. And let's also now just sort of talk about the controversial call. Like, I don't know if you can really say it's controversial. I think it's because I think it was a right call. Even James Bradbury admitted it. Of course, we're talking about in the final drive on the 3rd and 8 when Mahomes threw a pass to Juju Smith-Schuster. Bradbury essentially did commit a hold. He even admitted it to the reporters afterward. However, it was kind of like a minimal type of hold. Like, yes, it was a hold by the letter of the law if you hold it to that, but some argued that due to the flow of the game and that type of hold was not called all game, it wasn't really the right call. So let's just talk about that. Do you think that was sort of the right call to make at that time? Not whether it was the right call overall, we know it is, but do you think that the refs should have not called it because they were basically letting that go all game? Or do you think that that was the right thing to do, even if it did kind of kill the game?
Okay, fine. Like Eagles fans are feeling robbed because they called it, but if they didn't call it, Chiefs fans would have felt robbed. At the end of the day, the rules are the rules, and if that happens, then yeah, it's if it's a hold, it's a hold. And
Well,
and
so
I'm
why
not gonna-
was
and
that
I'm-
missed earlier?
and
So why was that missed earlier? Aren't the rules the rules?
well, it shouldn't have been missed earlier, and I'm not justifying that one either. So I don't really see that. I don't really see how this two wrongs make a right argument really comes into play. If you're gonna get a call wrong, that's not an argument in favor of getting all the calls wrong. Even if you want to make the argument of consistency, I can guarantee you in that situation, if they don't call that hold, then and the game changes as a result of that, then that probably taints this title in a different way. If the Eagles do happen to benefit off of that off of that missed call and win off of that in that alternative hypothetical situation, we all know that it didn't happen. But I would say in the future, the letter of the law should be more clear and more consistent, and the refs should be calling these things more consistently. And if that means calling them more often, so be it. As long as it's consistent. Now that's not an argument to let that one slide. It was the right call. I mean, I don't think you can complain that it wasn't the right call. And if you're going to make the argument that, well, yeah, they should have they shouldn't have called it, even though that would have been the wrong call. I don't see the justification in doing that, but that's just me though.
Yeah, I think they made the right call by blowing the whistle. I mean, it was not like, it is inconsistent, which is annoying, and I can see why Eagles fans would be upset, like if they're not calling that hold previously in the game and then they decide to do it at the most crucial juncture. But yeah, as a referee, being a referee is a tough job. You have to sometimes make decisions that are going to anger half the viewing audience at least. So yeah, it was the right call. I mean, I was supporting the Eagles, so I was like a little disappointed this is how this ends, but At the same time, like as a defensive player, your job is to stop the guys in front of you, and they failed to do that. And the reason they were in that position in the first place, they blew a 10-point halftime lead. So it's really all the things leading up to that moment that also can be pointed to as a reason that you lost the game. So I don't think it's fair to blame the ref. I think it's fair to say our defense should not have allowed 35 points already. So I don't feel that much sympathy for the Eagles players and fans right now. Like, I mean, it's an unfortunate, tough call in the situation, but yeah, it's the referee's job to call that. So they did it. And I'm glad the player actually admitted that it was a hold. So that showed some maturity. I would understand if he was upset and denied it, but he actually admitted it. So yeah, I mean, a lot of lessons to take from this game for the Eagles, and hopefully they'll be back next year, but you never know with the volatility in the NFL. Like, this could be the closest they get. So
I would also say that it was the right call made. I actually thought that it was the wrong call in the sense that it was within 5 yards, but then I realized it was holding and not the illegal contact penalty. So which are two different penalties in the NFL. But then again, I would also say that, officiating wasn't really a talking point like throughout the game. We were talking, I mean, we're seeing like, touchdowns and all that being scored throughout. I mean, never at one point like throughout the game was there like, oh, we the officials like missed this call or that call, right? It was like, there were a couple, like I think there was one delay a game for the Eagles, and maybe some close calls like with the play clock going down. But I think, you got to be consistent at the end of the day. And I just felt like it wasn't very obvious, like when you see it live, but when you see the replay, like, it's a slight tug, which, I mean, would it have been a touchdown? I would say probably not, considering where the ball landed and how much of an impact the pull on Juju Smith-Schuster had. But the call is the call, and you have to get on with it, whether it's a Super Bowl or a regular season game.
And I will say this as well. I think one thing where I will blame the Eagles a bit is also on that first down when Jerick McKinnon went and slid at the 1 yard line. I think the Eagles should have actually tackled him and tried to force him into the end zone, because McKinnon purposely slid at the 1 yard line. But the tactic at that point, if I were the Eagles, there should have been a defensive player sort of there who kind of pushes McKinnon into the end zone and gives them a touchdown essentially, and gives the Eagles the ball back. Yes, they're down by 7, but they have the ball back with 1:30.
Yeah, but the Chiefs trying to bleed the clock anyways.
Yeah, but if you push him into the end zone,
so you buy some more time.
You basically give them a touchdown, but you also get
and at that point, you also keep, if you're from Philadelphia standpoint, you have a timeout as well, and you had to blow the timeout. And I mean, I'm not saying a timeout with 8 seconds would have been a huge factor. Of course, we've seen what 13 seconds and 2 timeouts can do, especially with Kansas City just a year ago. But that's just something that I thought that Philadelphia didn't really play that situation well afterwards.
I do think it's the right call, but at the same time, I think what was more just inconsistent is just the refs ruling, right? Because oftentimes
the other holding calls as well. That's the biggest mistake.
That's where I think the refs deserve a lot of the blame.
It's not the final call. It was all the earlier calls that they let slide.
But that's still something that should upset the Eagles fans, right?
Yeah.
Because at that point, players play to how the refs are calling the game. That's just how it is. So if the refs are not letting or if the refs are not calling a penalty on a particular play, then that's how sort of the Eagles work. I mean, Bradbury said, I hoped he let it go. That was based on how the game was going at that point. So I do give the refs, like, they do deserve criticism there, but at least you can't really argue that it was the wrong call. And as I said, I think the Eagles still probably could have managed that situation better. I mean, I think someone should have really been tailing McKinnon on that final play and really pushed him into the end zone, or basically tackled him into the end zone, rather than sort of letting him just sort of be open and sliding at the 1. So I mean, there are things they could have done, but at the end of the day, the defense was just pretty bad. I mean, all throughout. I mean, no pressure on Patrick Mahomes, no sacks on him. Basically, let him do whatever he wanted, and he made them pay. And I mean, it's what happened, right? Like, I mean, in the two previous games, they played Daniel Jones and the Giants, who were never that good. Then, of course, they got the 49ers. Brock Purdy got injured. Josh Johnson got injured. Purdy came back. He couldn't throw the ball at all. So they had to just run it every time. So, I mean, the Eagles defense was never really challenged at all, like during this playoff run until they faced Mahomes, who was like generational talent now. So, I mean, overall, I think it was fine. I mean, I think the Eagles, like, I mean, they had a great season, but at the end of the day, it's their fault they lost. So anyone who's
In some sense, this kind of reminds me of a Super Bowl 52.
Oh.
In some sense, this kind of reminds me of Super Bowl 52. I mean, the Eagles won that. They were on the opposite side of that, but it kind of reminds me of that in the sense that both were very, very high scoring games. And the losing quarterback must be extremely frustrated because the losing quarterback performed extremely well, arguably better than the winning quarterback. And yet in a high scoring game, your defense let you down. And this has got to be, I think, the second highest, third highest scoring Super Bowl in history. And when your defenses don't show up, and something like this kind of happens, it kind of gave me those vibes. You said it gave you vibes of 38. It gave me vibes of 52, even though the outcome was different in that sense. But I will say that even though this is great in terms of entertainment value for having a high scoring game, I felt that just because it was just a back and forth, it felt almost like a slugfest almost. I felt like there wasn't really defense wasn't really it was kind of minimized as an important aspect of the game. I think that adds a different kind of dimensionality to it. But and I know the NFL is kind of moving towards emphasizing offense and making it harder to defend. But me personally, I think it kind of takes away from a little bit of the strategy. I'm probably in the minority with this opinion because we all have seen, most of us love to see a high scoring game, but at some point, if it just keeps going back and forth, it kind of cheapens the thrill of seeing a team score a touchdown. But that's just me.
Yeah, I actually personally thought that last year's Super Bowl was a better quality game. It was also a 3-point game, but that one had a lot of big defensive plays as well, like Aaron Donald terrorizing Joe Burrow and stuff. Like, you don't really see those narratives in yesterday's game. It was really both offenses, high octane, scoring a lot. There was that one Nick Bolton play where he had the defensive touchdown, but besides that, there's not really many memorable defensive plays besides the hold, which was not something you want to be remembered for. So I kind of agree with Rohan there. Like, I mean, I love to see offense and I love to see prolific quarterbacks do their thing, but there are two sides of the ball. And yeah, the Eagles defense really kind of didn't show up yesterday. And I do also see the connection Super Bowl 52 as a Patriots fan. That was a difficult one to watch with like the whole Malcolm Butler not playing and those things and giving up 41 points to Nick Foles. So that can definitely be frustrating. Like yesterday, I didn't really have like a strong like horse in the race. So I didn't care, but I was like, man, if I was an Eagles fan, I would be really upset at this defense right now. So, but I agree. It is entertaining.
I would also say that, it's frustrating as a Eagles fan to lose the Super Bowl, but it would be pretty frustrating as a Philadelphia fan overall to lose three championships in the span of 6 months, starting with the Phillies in the World Series and the Philadelphia Union in MLS Cup, and now the Super Bowl. What does that mean for the Stanley Cup and the NBA Finals? Of course, other teams will have a say in that, but it's not a good look. We'll say.
Sixers can make a deep run. It could happen, but I mean, this also just kind of gives me vibes of the 07-08 Boston teams, because that was a year where 4 out of the 5 major New England teams went to the final, and 2 of them won. Yeah, like of course the Revs and the Patriots lost, and the Red Sox and the Red Sox and the Celtics won that year. So it kind of had echoes of that, except going to 3 and losing 3. And in fact, the fun part about that is that Philadelphia Union lost the MLS Cup on the very same day that the Phillies lost the World Series. I remember both happened on the same day. So this has got to be a weird year if you're a Philly fan.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I'll say is, like, I was talking to Rohan earlier, I don't count the MLS championship in the same boat as the World Series or the Super Bowl. So, I mean, I probably would say like it's been difficult, but I mean, I would really count the World Series and Super Bowl losses as the ones that really sting for most of these fans. I think the MLS has sort of been brought as a talking point a little bit, but I don't think Philly really embraces the union the same way they do for the Eagles. Or
And
the
No, hey, don't.
if
Hey,
there are
listen,
any Union fans
don't disrespect.
out there, let me know. We're curious to hear from you.
I was just gonna say, don't disrespect a MLS season ticket holder and myself. Hey, put some respect on MLS's name. But anyway,
yeah, we
Yeah,
did lose.
you're out there to watch Kraft's other team.
Yeah, we did lose briefly. He is supposed to come back on. But in the meantime, so I don't know, let's just talk about the rest of this season and game overall. So I guess let's talk about the halftime show with the commercials. Let's just kind of go into that. Like Ujan, what were your thoughts on Rihanna and the halftime show? I thought she did a great job.
I did too. It was definitely a unique halftime show with the suspending platforms that, I just, I mean, it was, it's unique, and I thought it was a great show, to be honest. It was an interesting stage setup in the sense that it was using like the entire 100 yards. I would even say plus the end zones in the sense. It's not every time you see a stage set up just like that. I think having those choreographed dancers, like there were a whole lot of them. I think that might be a record for a Super Bowl halftime show. Honestly, I'd never seen so many performers in a halftime show before. So I think that, it was entertaining. I wouldn't say it was the best. I mean, it's hard to say which one you like the best. Of course, it depends on one's music taste and such. So I personally am not a huge fan of rap music. So the whole Eminem, Dr. Dre and all that, I mean, it was a great show. It's just, not my personal preference. So I would say that, I give Rihanna credit for putting on a show and on top of a great game, and people are still talking about it. So, and it's the fact that she did it while she's pregnant. I mean, that's even more impressive.
I mean, it was definitely an impressive show for the standards of the halftime show. And I add that second part because I kind of have a controversial opinion over here in that I'm not really a huge fan of the halftime show. I know that's what a lot of people watch the Super Bowl for, and I know it brings a lot of non-football fans in, but you have these great A-list musicians, these great artists, and it doesn't really do justice to them. And personally, in my opinion, to give them 10, 12 minutes to perform all of their greatest hits. I don't think it, and especially for an artist like Rihanna, whose career has spanned more than a decade, who has several records, several albums to show for it, to condense all of that into a 12-minute show, I don't think it does justice to her. And also, I thought that the show could have done a better job in incorporating some of the music, because if you saw, I mean, it was basically just her. There were a few band members in the back, but I didn't really see them get very involved. I mean, the main focus was her and all those other backup dancers. By the way, credit to them. They did a great job, by the way. The backup dancers, because they very rarely get credit. I think they should get credit. But overall, I think for the standard, what we see for the Super Bowl, it was a great halftime show. That said, I think if you really want to see great performances, go see them live. That's a much better way to go see them rather than watch this gimmicky 12-minute set at halftime in the middle of a football game. That's just my opinion, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think oftentimes like you have to combine 5 or 6. That she performed quite a few songs, like Umbrella, All of the Lights, just 2 of the many songs like off the top of my head I'll mention. So I thought she did a great job overall. I mean, I think I like the song selection. I know most of those songs, so I thought she did a good job overall. But yeah, I think that's the problem with the halftime show. Like when you only have like 12 minutes to perform like 6, 7 songs, you can only do a little bit of each of them. So I think that's kind of the unfortunate part. But at the very least, what I always like about the halftime show is it always kind of gets me back into older songs by some of these artists, and I add them to my Spotify playlist. So that's usually happens every year. There's usually a couple songs from the band that performed or the artist that performed who I really like, and I kind of get listening to again because of the Super Bowl halftime show. It reintroduces it to me. So I do appreciate that. So it'll be nice. I'll probably be listening to Umbrella now a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm curious to know who the performers are going to be next year.
We won't know until October.
Yeah,
It was supposed
yeah.
to be Taylor Swift, I believe, initially, but then she backed down because she was re-recording one of her earlier albums. So
And she's going on tour soon, so that's probably playing into it as well.
yeah, but I mean, maybe she'll perform next year then. I don't know. We'll find out.
I will say, in defense of the halftime show, it's gonna be the largest TV audience that they have like exposure to all year. Like, I know people watch the Grammys and they watch like other musical shows, but the Super Bowl, I don't know the exact numbers, but like, let's say 100 million people tune in, and a lot of them tune in just for the halftime show. So even though it is a 12-minute kind of very packed set, like it does bring in a lot of eyeballs. And then there are people like how Amartya said, like after listening to the artist, like, hey, maybe I should get into this music. So like then it increases streams and record sales if people still buy records, things like that. So I would say I in defense of halftime show, I like it. And actually, when I was younger in like the mid 2000s, they did a lot of older bands were performing, like the Rolling Stones, Paul McCartney, The Who, Tom Petty, who actually, like, for the younger generation, it's like, oh wow, like our parents know of these people, but I was like, wow, like these people are pretty good. So that's some cool exposure. I think Prince did one too. So
All right about that. I mean, I guess for us, I guess the three, Ujan, me, and Amartya, I think we can all kind of speak as millennials that when we watched all of those artists, ones who kind of were contemporaries with those in our parents' generation, our parents being essentially the boomer generation, that has kind of changed, and essentially now that Rihanna definitely falls into the category of like people who millennials probably grew up listening to.
yeah, she's new.
I did, but say, I don't know, maybe for someone like Ujan in Gen Z, it probably represents the older cohort. So I guess it's all relative.
I think Madonna did like 2012 or something, and Madonna was like, that was like a nostalgic one. So yeah, I think
it's good music, old and new, right? I like to listen to them all. I like to listen to old stuff just to know what like just to know the classics. But I'm always I keep my ear out for new stuff and keep myself current on these things. So it's a great way to just keep in touch with the craft, right? So a halftime show, it's not the best way to get exposure for these artists, but it's better than nothing, and at the very least it draws some non-football fans in. So I the
commercials.
I guess it's one of those things.
And it's interesting you talk about the Madonna performance in 2012 or February of 2012, because I feel like after Madonna performed, like the artists who the NFL have brought in for the Super Bowl, minus Coldplay, because Coldplay is an older generation in 2015 or the 2016.
Coldplay's a solid. That's a solid band that appeals to millennials. I would say it's probably. That's just based on my personal preference. It was probably one of the best halftime shows ever.
What I was trying to say is, besides Coldplay and probably last year's performance with Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, Mary J. Blige, 50 Cent, who had a one performance in that song too, like one song he performed
in the club.
Yeah, exactly. I think like besides those two artists or the group of artists, like it's been like Beyonce for Ravens 49ers, Bruno Mars, Katy Perry, Lady Gaga.
Left Shark.
Yeah, Lady Gaga, and then Adam Levine and Maroon 5.
But best one of all time's got to be the U2 one in Super Bowl 36. It's hands down the best one.
Well, I will say this, like when people say hands down the best one, it also comes down to preference and what artists.
I'll say that because of the music, but also just because of where we were at the time as a country. I
know, yeah, but like I think the problem is like when people try to judge these halftime shows, right? Like everyone has their own preferences, right? Like Ujan says he prefers a particular genre of music. It really depends on what type of music we really like listening to, right? Like personally, I like listening to a lot of different types of music, but a lot of people I know, they are either into rock, they're into hip hop, they're into pop, they're more into those types of genres, right? So naturally, like they're probably likely to like the performances of, like, if they're into hip hop, they will love what the performance last year with Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre.
I thought it was a great show. I thought it was
a great show too. Shows, it's honestly really hard for me.
Actually, a lot of people yesterday, they praised the national anthem by Chris Stapleton. He's like a country music singer.
Yeah, Chris Stapleton's great.
That was really good one too, because he put a unique spin on it. But sometimes people try to get too creative with the national anthem, like changing around the tunes and stuff. So I was seeing some praise
to doing that.
Yeah.
There's very little upside if you're doing the national anthem. The best case scenario is that they don't criticize you.
Exactly. And they also did a
I was-
performance of Lift Every Voice and Sing, which was nice. So yeah, I thought the music was good.
I will say that I've been watching Super Bowl since Super Bowl 42, and of course that was a very rough one to start for me.
In
But
Arizona too, right?
beg your pardon?
In Arizona too.
Yeah, that's it. Yep. Yeah, that's it. That was also the case. I've seen the Super Bowl halftime shows just change. It used to be just like kind of like a 10-minute concert from like your Tom Petty's to Bruce Springsteen's to the Who's, right? And now it's just all these elaborate performances, from Beyonce's and your Bruno Mars, and it's more than just the artist. It's like pretty much the artist, like, and everyone else that goes along. Bruno Mars and Beyonce came back for Super Bowl 50, the half century of Super Bowls, right? That celebration. But after that, Lady Gaga and your Justin Timberlakes and your Maroon 5s and, everybody after that up until now, it's much different than, for like your U2s or, Paul McCartney's and all that. They all did great in their own rights, for what they have done. Now it's just a whole, like I said, just like the generation shift with the quarterbacks, it's generation shift with the music.
I mean, oh yeah. I mean, it's hard to disagree that TB12 is the best Gen X QB, best of all time until Mahomes probably catches him in so and so number of years if that happens. But yeah, Mahomes is definitely the future, and at least among the millennial generation, Mahomes is by far he's a contender. He's definitely going to go in the history books. Just give it 5 or 10 years. I think the discussion's already starting. And he's got a bright career ahead of him, barring anything major. He's got a bright future.
Yeah. And so yeah, and I think the commercials overall, I just want to quickly talk about it. I thought some of them were kind of disappointing this year. Probably the one that I kind of liked the most was the Miles Teller, the one where he's dancing to the phone, waiting the song while you're waiting for someone to pick up. I thought that was kind of humorous and funny. But really, yeah, I don't know. I thought most of the commercials kind of fell flat this year compared to previous years. So I don't know. Did you guys have any commercials you really liked? Obviously, last year there was a Coinbase commercial. There was also
we all know how that turned out.
There was also a nice Sopranos commercial as well. I think it was tied to some electric vehicle they were doing.
I will say there was one commercial where Elton John was playing the triangle, the one where I guess the triangle was set. It was like part of the new. There was also the one where I think the one where the dad left the binky at home. That was commercial.
Yeah,
I thought that was pretty funny, but I thought those are the two that kind of stood out to me personally. I didn't really like the Pringles one that they kind of reused from the previous year. Not even I have a pretty small arm, and not even I can get my arm stuck in a Pringles box like that. So, I get it's for a commercial, but I think the creativity was lacking there.
There was also that confusing one. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Pratik.
Oh no, there was also a confusing one. I think it was like Tubi or something, and it showed the TV menu come up, and people were confused. They're like, "Oh wait, who's playing with the remote?" It's you gotta. But that was the one I kind of remembered. But I wasn't a fan of any of the commercials really, but there are some good movie trailers out there. Guardians of the Galaxy 3, that one should be good. I think The Flash. Also a Michael Jordan movie with Ben Affleck and Matt Damon about Air Jordan or something. So those caught my interest, but as for the commercials themselves, nothing extraordinary.
Yeah, I thought the Breaking Bad one was pretty creative. I think it was for Pop Chips. They got Walter White, Jesse, and Tuco. Actually, they basically recreated that whole scene from season 1.
I love that. That was awesome.
They even got Tuco to say that's tight, or Jesse to say, whoa, like, I mean, so except it was all for pop chips, obviously. But I thought that was pretty creative. That must have cost a lot of money. So I guess it was worth it because I remembered it.
Yeah. So, okay. I mean, we were sort of talking about this a little bit now, and yeah, welcome, Anirban. Thanks for joining us. I know it's a little late, but yeah, let's just quickly just sort of talk about the kind of like, so now Patrick Mahomes, right? He's 2-1 in the Super Bowl. Obviously the one loss was to Brady, but he did win it this year. And I mean, he's the best quarterback in the league right now. And I guess like legacy wise, right? Like where does this win now put him in the all-time like kind of list of quarterbacks? Like Pratik, I just saw Ujan, and I really kind of want to hear you guys like sort of where do you think he sort of goes?
Mid-pack, but I mean, he's a long trajectory upward from here.
Like mid-pack? What do you mean? Like who? So which quarterbacks do you think he surpassed?
Well, I mean, he's definitely up there with the likes of Montana and such.
I don't think so yet.
He's close to getting there.
But he's not.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a controversial opinion. Like, I mean, I think he's done great. He's only 27, so hopefully there's more winning ahead for him. But I will say, like, I think the loss to Brady in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, like, and that wasn't his fault. That was also like his O-line was not great and Tampa's defense really good. I think that blemish kind of it established like he actually did not defeat Tom Brady in the postseason 0-2. And I think that could come into play later on when you're comparing. If there's an argument to be made between Mahomes and Brady, the head-to-head is always going to be not in Mahomes' favor. But that being said, I think I might say he's a top 5 quarterback right now, like ever. Like, I mean, you got Brady, Montana. I think he's surpassed Aaron Rodgers, which may upset some people, but Rodgers only made 1 Super Bowl, and a lot of times his team should have made it and they didn't. So I think you could say that Mahomes is like the 3rd or 4th greatest ever. He plays the game very uniquely. Like, he's extremely mobile. He can win in a lot of ways. And this one showed it was impressive because he didn't have Tyreek Hill, who was like one of his greatest receivers he's had. And true, he still has Travis Kelce, but like you said, he makes some of those other guys way better, like Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore. So he has that effect, and he is, like I said, he's only 27. So I hope that the next 5-10 years he'll continue to grow and win more. But he's already super impressive resume. And there are some who will say that if you're comparing him and Brady in terms of the first 5 years of their career, I think Max Kellerman said this, like, if you look at Brady's first 5 years and Mahomes' first 5 years, Mahomes is actually better. But the thing to note is also the NFL itself has changed into like a more passing friendly league. Like, Brady led the league in touchdowns in 2002, but he only threw 28 touchdowns. And 28 touchdowns this year would have been like outside the top 10. So, like, I mean, Mahomes is taking advantage of the pass happy NFL right now. So yeah, I think ultimately his numbers can end up being great. In terms of Super Bowl wins, he's got 2. So I think if he gets a 3rd Super Bowl, that's really going to separate himself from some of these guys like the John Elways and the Ben Roethlisberger has 2, Eli Manning has 2. So I think
Dan Marino, if he's won anything.
No,
like,
Dan Marino.
Dan Marino's a 0 Super Bowl. Like, he was a tremendous quarterback, but he never won a Super Bowl.
One Super Bowl in the 80s where they lost to the 49ers, I believe.
Exactly. Yeah. So even the list of quarterbacks with 2 Super Bowls, it's not a huge list. It's I think Troy Aikman has 3, I think.
Yes. Bradshaw has 4. So
Bradshaw.
I mean, this the way it works off the top of my head, because I'm not looking this up right now, but like Montana, I mean, obviously you have Brady, who's just sort of at a different level with 7. Montana and Bradshaw are both with 4. Aikman has 3, and 2, there's a bunch of guys. There's like, I mean, Ben Roethlisberger, John Elway, Peyton Manning, Eli Manning, Jim Plunkett, even back in the day. There's a lot of quarterbacks. There's a decent number with 2, but I mean, yeah, I mean, I would say, I mean, personally, I think this win combined with how Mahomes plays in the playoffs, I don't know if I'd say like he's surpassed Peyton Manning, but I mean, Peyton Manning was a great regular season quarterback, but he was not great in the playoffs. Like, there were consistent seasons where he just lost games where he should not have lost. And I mean, Mahomes has that clutch like component to his game. So I mean, I would honestly say at this point, I mean, maybe it's a little controversial, but like I would say like he's probably past Peyton Manning in my opinion. I mean, he's basically has the same number of rings as Peyton Manning. He doesn't have the MVPs yet, the regular season MVPs, but he has 2 rings, the same amount as Peyton Manning, and he's also ultra clutch in the playoffs. So, I mean, I don't think it's as far-fetched to say that he's surpassed Peyton Manning, and probably John Elway in that list too. I mean, I would say probably really, like, besides Brady and Montana, it's probably him who's probably next tier. So, I mean, I don't know if that's really like great to say like he's top 3 all time, but that's why I say more he's in the top 5. I'd have to look more into the other quarterbacks, but I would really say, like, I mean, he has a while to catch Brady and he has a ways to go. I mean, he's going to have to keep this up. And I mean, I know like the AFC going forward with Joe Burrow and Josh Allen, who are both hungry for some success going forward, they're going to continue to give Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs all the trouble they can give. And at some point, I expect them, like Cincinnati already did to him last year, right? They beat him. And this year they fell just short. But I expect Joe Burrow to continue to give Patrick Mahomes a great fight and probably get the better of him. Same with Josh Allen. And I mean, Trevor Lawrence had a great year. I mean, who's to say Justin Herbert, if the new offensive coordinator doesn't figure it out? And maybe there's some other quarterbacks who end up.
And let's not forget Jalen Hurts, even though he lost this
That's
time. He had a
he's
great
in the
game.
NFC. I'm talking.
Oh
about
yeah,
Kansas
but
Super Bowl.
but even if he gets to the Super Bowl, he's going to be another. He's going to be another thorn in his side in the future, if it gets there.
Yeah, and that was actually one point I wanted to make was like the Chiefs, their path to the Super Bowl, all those games were close. Like even the Jaguars gave them like a big fight. Like at one point it looked like when Mahomes was injured and Chad Henne was in, like Jaguars might actually pull off the upset. And then them and the Bengals were super tight, like neck and neck. And it was a late penalty against the Bengals that actually helped the Chiefs win on a field goal there. So like the Chiefs did not have an easy path to the Super Bowl. So it's not a guarantee that they're going to make more. I mean, Buffalo had a disappointing end to the year. They're going to be hungry again. Bengals will be back. There's a couple other teams in the AFC that could make the jump, like Jaguars and Chargers, and who knows, maybe the Patriots. So like it could be, yeah, like the Chiefs did really well, but they're going to have to do this every year, like run the gauntlet, play really difficult opponents just to get to the Super Bowl. So I don't think it's a guarantee Mahomes will win more.
Yeah. I will also say that the reason why I just think that this perhaps gets overlooked a little bit is the fact that every year that Kansas City has had Mahomes as a starter, he's hosted AFC Championship game, and it's one thing to just go to the AFC Championship game. You know, the Patriots went like 7 straight AFC Championship games, but you know they didn't host.
Yeah, somewhere on the road.
Has hosted the last 5. I mean, one of them was to the Patriots and they lost, and the other one was last year against Cincinnati. So
he's never had to play a road game, actually.
Exactly. And like there was a stint from like 2004 to 2018 where Brady never won a road playoff game, but that's because he really hasn't had to. And I think the home field advantage is, I wouldn't say underappreciated, but it's, and and the fact that you have a first round bye too, this is the first time in the new playoff format where both the number 1 seeds have gone to the Super Bowl, and it's been around for 3 years now. Kansas City was the 1 seed in Super Bowl 55, but the Bucs were a wild card team. I mean, last year it was 2 4 seeds. So, you have to take that into consideration that, the bye week isn't necessarily, it's important to have a regular season, a very good regular season. And, Kansas City has been doing that, year in, year out for the last few years now.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely an important thing to bring up. But also, like, I think this always goes to, assuming Patrick Mahomes plays at this trajectory, right? Because I think that's the more interesting question. And there's a lot of reasons to think he's well positioned to, outside of the points you already brought up. For one thing, he's on that 10-year, $450 million contract, right? Which, at the time seems so big. Now not so much. I mean, you think about how much you expect players like Lamar Jackson to be getting his next contract renewal. We know Josh Allen will be probably in a couple of years like inking a new deal. I mean, the price for top tier quarterbacks is only going to skyrocket because people have seen just how vital it is to have a truly elite, not just a game manager, like a truly elite, like top 3 in the league quarterback. So when you think about the 10-year $450 million, that actually considering like he's already, I'd argue, like if you were to sign a deal right now, he'd be worth way more than that. So you think about how much kind of extra space that leaves around to like be able to afford to keep players or sign new players. Not to mention, like you guys already mentioned, the Chiefs were really, I think, smart about, they didn't really lose as much talent as other championship winning teams. I mean, just look at Tampa Bay or like the Rams, how they lost like playmakers like Von Miller, or in Tampa Bay's case, losing like though more for injury, like players like Ryan Jensen or Jason Pierre-Paul. The Chiefs have been really good at retaining talent and adding really valuable role players like Kadarius Toney or Marcus Valdes-Scantling. And coupled with Andy Reid not going anywhere anytime soon, it seems like a really stable situation in Kansas City, which I think is only going to help, Patrick Mahomes build his legacy.
Yeah,
If there are conditions to build a dynasty in the future, I think Anirban pretty much sums up why the conditions are as ripe as it is possible. But any discussion about that is premature at best. I think that the biggest threats to Patrick Mahomes is going to come from Cincinnati and from Buffalo. And of course, if you're talking entire league and talking about Super Bowl probabilities, I think from the NFC, the biggest threats have got to be the Niners and of course the Eagles are. The Eagles could potentially come knocking again. I don't know as much about the Eagles. I mean, this year kind of seemed like an anomaly, but if Jalen Hurts can keep playing the way he's playing, I mean, they got a pretty strong roster as well. So I mean, I wouldn't discount the NFC either. But yeah, Buffalo and Cincinnati.
It's also just worth noting, like, I mean, right now, like, it just seems like Buffalo and Cincinnati are the only two teams that are really going to threaten Kansas City. I mean, obviously it seems like that right now, but just
it's because of recency bias.
Yeah.
I know there's
So,
some
no,
guys
I mean,
there.
let's
I'll
just talk.
I'll acknowledge that.
Like, look in 2020, right? If someone in the end of 2020, after the end of Super Bowl 55, if they had told you that the following year the Cincinnati Bengals would beat Kansas City and go to the Super Bowl, you wouldn't have believed that then. So I'm just saying, a team like the Jaguars, right? I mean, I'm just throwing them out there because they had a big leap with Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence. That's a team that I could see like get better and maybe challenge Mahomes more going forward. So, I mean, that's just one team, for example, the Chargers. If
the Broncos with Sean Payton.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, I mean, you never know with coaching, right? Like, all of a sudden, Mahomes, at some point, it's also just worth mentioning, he has hosted the AFC Championship game every year. But there were a few years where the Chiefs haven't been the one seed.
It felt like an Eagles crowd. I mean, I know Super Bowl's a neutral site, but the crowd definitely felt like.
Well, yeah, but anyways, what I was trying to say about that is true. I did feel that too. But what I was trying to say is, like, like in 2019, the Chiefs were actually the 2 seed, but the 1 seed, the Ravens, lost to the Titans. So that's why the Chiefs were able to host that AFC Championship game against the Titans. And then last year, the Chiefs were also the 2 seed, but the 1 seed Titans at that point lost to the Bengals. So basically, Mahomes has had a couple of seasons where he hasn't finished number 1. He just hasn't had a situation, which isn't his fault. I mean, it's basically the 1 seed lost the round before, so he basically got to host the game. He did basically everything right. But at some point, he's probably going to have to go to the road, maybe to play Josh Allen in Buffalo, or maybe to play Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. And those games are probably going to be a new challenge for him. But it's one that I'm sure he's capable of dealing with. I mean, he is a phenomenal quarterback, and it is really fun watching him play. Like, he is one of the few guys, like when he's playing, even if it's not a Patriots game, I will watch him. Like on Sunday Night Football, I will make sure I try to watch him play because he is so dynamic. He is such a fun player to watch. I just love like seeing him scramble like around and just doing whatever he can. He's amazing. Like, I don't want comparing it to other sports, but he's kind of like, like with LeBron James. Like when LeBron James is playing, you want to watch just because you're just amazed by what he's capable of doing.
Or CR7 or Messi, if you want to bring in other sports.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's a legend. I mean, I know he's young, but I mean, I think, I mean, he's just like a generational talent. And I mean, I'm glad that.
Or Big Poppy back in the day. I mean, okay, the list goes on and on.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess we've kind of concluded our main discussion of the Super Bowl.
Well, just to break in, the Lakers are actually playing at 10 p.m. So if you do want to watch the big man LeBron James, now's your chance.
Yeah.
I don't. He might not even be playing tonight. He was at the Super Bowl last night. He actually got booed when he came on the screen, which was funny. I think a lot of Suns fans maybe in attendance. I don't know, but
yeah. But I guess before we go into our traditional picking the Super Bowl winner for next season, I just sort of want everyone to just sort of share their thoughts on the overall season. We can talk about the Patriots too. We haven't really talked about them much because they haven't been playing much, but it's like, what were your sort of thoughts on the 2022 NFL season? Like, what did you like? What did you not like? And I guess, what are you sort of, let's just go with that.
Well, I mean, I would be remiss, and I haven't been on this show in a while, so I guess I haven't shared my thoughts. But if this is the end for Tom Brady, I mean, it's really just a terrific run. So like, football will miss him, but the thing with sports is there's always new guys to step up and fill the void. So, and this year really did show the young quarterbacks taking another leap forward. I'm not just talking about Mahomes and Allen guys, but guys like when they were healthy, like Tua Tagovailoa. When he was healthy, the Dolphins they were a beast, but the problem is he couldn't stay healthy. So it is exciting to see these new guys step up and really like take the reins and say like, it's our time now. So yeah, the football will miss Tom Brady for sure, but the league is in good hands. A lot of really exciting young teams coming up. And I thought it was a great season. Like there really felt like there was parity at one point. Like there were teams like the Jaguars and stuff, like reeling off long win streaks. The Detroit Lions, actually, like they had a late turnaround, too late to make the playoffs, but I think they'll be good going forward. And then some teams that people expected would be really good, like the Packers, like maybe not delivering to expectations. So it sets the stage for a very interesting offseason. What's going to happen to Aaron Rodgers and Derek Carr, and some teams like the 49ers, they have big decisions to make at quarterback position. So yeah, some great storylines. I will say as a Patriots fan, it was a little bit disappointing personally, but even there's hope for the future there. They got Bill O'Brien back, so hopefully next year is different, but overall, yeah, good entertainment for sure.
Yeah, I just also want to just quickly interject for teams that are disappointing. We have to mention the Let's Ride Denver Broncos, who were probably.
Oh yeah, I forgot about them. Yeah.
Whatever happened to him?
Russell Wilson, yeah. Well, but they got, like Anirban said, they got a great coach now, Sean Payton, offensive mastermind. So that's something to look forward to.
But like good players don't stay good forever. I mean, and good, and also when players emerge, they seemingly come out of nowhere. So that's kind of what makes this makes predicting these things tricky. I mean, those who can do it have a special skill, but we kind of see what the next generation of players is going to look like. I mean, even Mac looked like for the Patriots looked like he kind of at times it looked like he regressed a little bit, but I don't really put that on him. And Mac is also really, really young, and he's got several years ahead of him. And with the new offensive coach coming in, I think that, I mean, at least for the Patriots, the prospects should get better. And I think for the Patriots, the defense is pretty solid, and most of that is intact. So I have no reason to be concerned about to have any major concerns about the Pats defense. And if the offense can get better, I mean, if even a few things had gone the other way in the Pats' favor in this previous season, they would have gotten to the playoffs, and who knows what they would have been able to do. I mean, I personally think that even if they made the playoffs, they probably would have gotten crushed based on the way the season was going. But every recovery has to start from something, right? And I think this is the beginning to recovery. I mean, initially I thought that it would take a complete rebuild where you would tear everything down, but it looks like right now there are enough pieces intact to kind of put it back together without having to tear the whole thing down. So I'll admit that I probably misjudged the situation at the time, but the future will inform whether what I'm saying right now is accurate either. So but that's what makes this game fascinating to watch, and that's what makes it great to be a fan.
Yeah, I mean, I think on Mac Jones, right? I think now no longer you can say, like, I mean, it's not really an excuse, but I mean, when Matt Patricia is the offensive play caller, then obviously it's going to be like a tricky situation because you're basically putting someone with a defensive background calling the offensive play. Now, I think with Bill O'Brien, and if they can add a receiver either through free agency or trade, I actually like the chances next year to be a competitive team. Now, here's the thing, like we're just gonna have to accept that Buffalo with the Super Bowl contender, regardless of whether or not they've won yet. They're gonna be around for a while. So, but that doesn't
I
mean
think it's almost fair to say that they have a lock on the AFC East now.
Oh, you already know that. I mean, the Ravens, just look at the Ravens, for example. I'm just going to point back to 10 years ago. Joe Flacco and Ben Roethlisberger, both in the AFC North, right? I mean, there were years Ben Roethlisberger was the best quarterback in the AFC North, right? Between Joe Flacco, Andy Dalton, right? But he didn't win the division every year, right? So that's not so. Just because a quarterback is better, and I'll acknowledge, obviously, Josh Allen's the best quarterback in the division. Just because a quarterback is better doesn't mean that you all of a sudden have a free pass to just finish in second or third place and miss the playoffs. I'm not going to accept that as an excuse.
Well, I didn't say that part. I did say that the Buffalo has a lock on the AFC East. I didn't say that New England is going to have a free pass to finish second or third and miss the playoffs.
Well, you are saying that second. Well, you're basically saying the second, a free pass to finish second, right? Because you're
I
saying
think they're still going to make the playoffs, though. I think if a few things go right that didn't go right last year, and everything that went right last year stays right, there's a pretty good chance the Pats make the playoffs.
No, okay. First of all, I wasn't saying that they have a free pass. I'm not saying that you were saying that either, but well, you are saying that you have a free pass for second place, though, because if you are saying Buffalo's the lock, right?
Well, I think it's pretty unlikely. I think you can always make a run for it, but I think.
Well, what about the I just wanted the Ravens, right? What about the Ravens,
yeah.
right? So that's
yeah. I'm not saying it's not possible, but right now it kind of looks like the Bills have a lock.
I mean, look back at 2021, right? The Bills only won that division by one game, right?
Yeah.
In 2021, the Bills only won that division by one game, even though, of course, we know what happened in January. But the Bills were 11-6. The Patriots were 10-7. And I mean, every season that the Bills.
Yeah, and this season the Dolphins were briefly looking like the best team in the AFC East. Like they beat the Bills in the first head-to-head matchup. They almost won a second time in Buffalo. And then even in the wild card round with Skylar Thompson, they only lost by 3 points. So I'm kind of excited to see the Dolphins. Like, even though as a Patriots fan, you don't want more competition in the division, but the Dolphins are a team on the rise. And the Jets literally look like they're a quarterback away from being like contenders. Like they had Zach Wilson and Mike White. So if you get somebody like a Derek Carr or a Jimmy G, I would watch out for the Jets as well. I'm not even mentioning Aaron Rodgers to the Jets because that scares me, but because they have talented young receivers. But yeah, AFC East is going to be tough. I would not give the Bills a free pass to be first. Like anything can happen, and division games are just different. Like they're like teams come out motivated. So I think both AFC East and NFC East, they're going to continue to be like really good competitive divisions.
I will say that, as much as it was a great season, we did have a stark reminder that, there are more things and there are a lot more things that are important than football. Case in point, the DeMar Hamlin, as we're all Patriots fans here, and even though the Bills are probably definitely one of our arch rivals in the AFC East, you gotta wish them speedy recovery. I mean, you just hate to see those kind of things, especially for late in the season, how big of a game it was. It was great to see him like in the stands at the Super Bowl. But it would be just amazing from just an NFL fan point of view, just to see him on the field again, but there were a lot of great games. I would say, like, Kansas City and Cincinnati, the game at Paycor Stadium, that was a great game. There were some interesting results, Indianapolis beating Kansas City earlier in the season. That's just the unpredictability of the NFL. Who would have knew that Brock Purdy would have been the starting quarterback for the 49ers in the playoffs, right? Who would have thought that Geno Smith would come back and take Seattle to the playoffs? All these, fun storylines, just like Brock Purdy. How about Skylar Thompson, as Pratik mentioned? These are just some of the list goes on, right? Minnesota winning the division, right? I think that, as much as, they lost the wild card game, I think, if I had to pick one game of the season, I would actually say Minnesota versus Buffalo week 10, like the game that went to overtime, and Josh Allen fumbling the ball at the 1 yard line that would have sealed the game, and the Vikings get a touchdown, and then the game goes to overtime, and you just couldn't have written a better script, or better yet, Minnesota again. I bring them up, being down 33-0 at halftime to Indianapolis and winning that on the last play of the game. I mean, those are just two incredible games this season. And it must be hard being a Minnesota fan this season, with all those close games. So,
man, Matt Ryan he's just so sad, man. Like the two biggest blown leads, like one in a Super Bowl and then 33-0. I feel for the guy. He's
Yeah, I also just want, because we were talking about the Colts. Like, I also just want to give them a special shout out for giving us Jeff Saturday as the coach. Someone who had no coaching experience at all, just gets hired mid-season from the ESPN. And after beating the Raiders, which was pretty funny because the Raiders were actually a disaster. I did pick them to reach the Super Bowl, which I was completely wrong about. And I will be happily admit that I was so wrong about that. I'm admitting it on the show, but I mean, the Raiders, I mean, I think it's just the whole disaster with Jeff Saturday as a coach, that he was even being considered again to be the coach. It's just, I don't even know what the Colts are thinking, but that's the Colts. I mean, they seem to they haven't had a quarterback since Andrew Luck, like a long-term quarterback since Andrew Luck retired in the start of the 2019 season. So that team was just kind of very entertaining to watch. I mean, for the wrong reasons. And I mean, also the Raiders, just like, I mean, losing to Baker Mayfield, who had just joined the team a few days before, that was pretty great too, even though the Raiders, of course, basically kind of screwed the Patriots at the end with that lateral disaster. But I don't know, there was just a lot of funny storylines from the season.
They didn't screw us. We screwed ourselves.
Well, I mean, you could also point to that blown call on the touchdown by Keelan Cole, which should have been out of bounds.
Yeah.
Which they got a break on.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, that's true. The Patriots also messed that game up. But I mean, anyways, like the Raiders, like there were a lot of very interesting storylines. So I think next year we'll see what happens like going forward. I mean, obviously the Green Bay Packers were a huge disappointment, losing to the Lions the final week when they needed a win. I mean,
and can I also just bring up a special shout out to the Patriots having Zappy fever for a few weeks while that was
all the
fun.
way into that Monday night matchup against the worst team in the league, the Chicago Bears, who blew out the Patriots.
Well, it was fun while it lasted, though. I mean, yes, it was a blow, but I enjoyed it. It was one of the few highlights of the season as a Patriots fan.
I'll say probably they lost this game, but that game against the Packers where Zappy comes in, throws a touchdown pass, like that got me so amped up because that game, Jack Jones had a pick six off Aaron Rodgers. Like I know they lost that game in the end, but that game has so many amped up moments. And even in the overtime, I think Marcus Jones returned the ball at the 50-yard line. And the Patriots just needed a couple more plays to get into field goal range, with a field goal actually winning the game, and they couldn't do it. And that was frustrating. But I mean, a special shout out to Marcus Jones for that punt return against the Jets too, in a 10-3 game, which basically kind of ended Zach Wilson's starting career with the Jets. So there were a lot of very entertaining moments this season. Obviously very kind of tough to watch as a Patriots supporter, but I mean, it was a great year overall. And I mean, we'll see what 2023 has to bring. Obviously the Chiefs, Mahomes, Josh Allen and the Bills, Joe Burrow. And I'm hoping we have a couple more names to add to that list next year, just in terms of competitive balance. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, not much to add here. I mean, one thing is always to point at the rookie class, which I think was pretty strong across the NFL. I mean, just looking at the Patriots, Cole Strange, I think finished the season pretty good in the offensive line, and he's going to be a good person to build our O-line around next year. I mean, obviously Jack Jones, Marcus Jones, just really good for us. But across the league, I mean, on defense, you had Sauce Gardner on the Jets. On offense, you had players, of course, like Damian Pierce on the Texans, Isaiah Pacheco turned up big, Christian Watson, Kenny Pickett, and quarterback. I mean, a lot of really exciting performances from rookies. And of course, Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, some said, and leading his team at least to the NFC. So I'm pretty excited about that. And another thing, I think we don't always talk about the commentators, but I thoroughly enjoyed Greg Olson as a commentator for Fox. A little sad that he might be, in a bit of a trouble with Tom Brady, with a really famous guy called Tom Brady about to potentially take over literally take over his job. So I hope Greg Olson still has a parking spot at Fox and that he can find a good commentating job somewhere else, because I think he had a really nice
Got a job with Drew Bledsoe somewhere.
Yeah, where he kind of let the game do the talking, and I think he's really like the ideal commentator for me, where doesn't take away from the game. He kind of adds commentary when it's useful, but otherwise just kind of lets us enjoy the game as it's going. So just I don't think we always talk about commentators, and obviously they're not the most important part by any mean, but Greg Olsen was I think he had a great rookie campaign himself.
Yeah, and also just Kevin Burkhardt too. I thought both of them did an outstanding job calling the Super Bowl yesterday. So I mean, considering Fox for so long had Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, who of course moved to ESPN. I mean, I think they're in very good shoes going forward with Burkhardt and Olsen. And at least Brady said that he plans to start in 2024. So next season it's still Olsen and Burkhardt, which is great. So yeah,
but that's not going to be the case the next time that Fox has the Super Bowl in whatever 3 or 4 years from now.
well, you never know how they're going to deal with it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just for reference, right? Fox back in 2004 for the Patriots Eagles Super Bowl 39, they went with a booth of Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, and Chris Collinsworth, who used to work at Fox. So they had Collinsworth and Aikman work together. So I mean, if Olsen is such a big hit, maybe they combine Brady and Olsen to be with Burkhardt together. I don't know how they're going to deal with it. That's a good problem to have on their end, having such talented commentators, but we'll see. I mean, that's their problem to deal with. And when it comes to it, I'm sure they'll find some solution. So yeah, that was sort of the case of the 2022 season. It's been a lot of fun doing this podcast for the last several years. So I mean, it's cool to see it. Another season's gone by. Started this in 2018 when it was Brady's last season with the Patriots. Now it's been 3 seasons since he's gone, but we've still kept the show on. So it's been awesome overall.
And almost coming up on 2 years on YouTube. So
yep. Yeah. But okay, yeah. Before we just wrap the show up, because I know it's getting late in the East Coast. It's always our kind of tradition now. Picking the winner of Super Bowl 58, which is in Las Vegas next year. Let's just go ahead. I mean, just for record, I did pick the Buccaneers over the Raiders, which was completely wrong. But on this show last year, I did say the Chiefs would beat the Rams. So I don't know. I don't know what I'll pick yet, but let me think about it. But I'll let one of you guys go. Rohan.
You picked the winner correctly. So
Rohan.
I will give you that.
So, Rohan,
I'm going. So and I'm going with the Niners winning the NFC Championship, and I think they're going to lose to the Bills in the Super Bowl. That's what I got.
Well, I sure hope you're wrong, because I don't really want to see an AFC East team other than the Patriots lift the Lombardi Trophy. And if I recall correctly, you said that last year. So if that's that the Bills would hoist the Lombardi Trophy, I like that prediction. Just let's hope it's wrong. So in terms of the AFC, I will say that I think it's gonna come down to, I think Cincinnati's gonna come back. Kansas City could ease. Of course, you have your main contenders with Kansas City, Cincinnati, Buffalo. I think there will be, the Chargers will be in the mix, but with Kansas City always having their way in the division, I just don't see like anybody other than Kansas City winning the division, especially with Mahomes. Especially if Mahomes is gonna be healthy, like he almost always is, apart from the playoffs, right? I'm certainly interested in seeing like a Kenny Pickett year 1 to year 2 jump. See like if perhaps Pittsburgh kind of sneaks in the wild card. They've never had a losing record under Mike Tomlin. Of course, the Patriots will be going to Acrisure Stadium this year, in 2023, I should say. So I'm actually gonna go with Cincinnati in the AFC. In terms of the NFC, I don't see the Eagles coming back, at least for now, because the NFC East is a very interesting division in the sense that there isn't really a repeat winner, and it has been the case for quite some time now. Dallas they'll get in the playoffs, but you never really know what's going to happen with them. There's always going to be some sort of last play blunder against maybe San Francisco, for all we know. Speaking of San Francisco, they'll be in, Seattle. What are they going to do with Geno Smith? And are they going to, come back into the playoffs? I think it's going to come down to, it's a tough one, to be honest. I mean, I will actually say San Francisco and Cincinnati. And it almost happened this year. But I think they're gonna come in. They're gonna have, like, this time San Francisco will have Christian McCaffrey for a whole season, right? So I think that'll certainly help them out. And
Who's their quarterback going to be? Purdy or Lance or someone else?
I think it has to be Purdy. I mean, as much as Trey Lance is great. I mean, it's unfortunate with the injury, and I just think that San Francisco has been so unlucky with their with the injuries that they've had. I mean, the one year they made it to the Super Bowl was when Jimmy Garoppolo was healthy all year, right? So that's going to be the big key for San Francisco. And I think if they can keep, whoever their quarterback is healthy, they should be serious contenders for the Super Bowl. So 49ers, Bengals, and I'm going to say the Bengals get there first.
I'm gonna go with the out of the box matchup that's more kind of historically you'd think it's a Thursday night football kind of matchup, but I'm gonna go with the Jaguars and the Lions in the Super Bowl. And I know this probably sounds insane, but also, like you said, at the end of 2020, who would have thought Cincinnati is going to beat Kansas City in the AFC title game? And I think the Lions, the way they're playing at the end of this year with Coach Dan Campbell, everybody's bought in. They have good young talent. They also have draft picks, high draft picks, as a result of that Matthew Stafford trade with the Rams. So they're really going to shore up. Aiden Hutchinson's great defensive talent. On offense, they got all these guys. They got Amon Ra. They got Javonte Williams. They've really got some dudes that can DeAndre Swift. So that's going to be a team making a big leap next year in the NFC, and potentially Aaron Rodgers is leaving the NFC North. So that leaves it like Lions, Vikings. That's going to be a fun rivalry. So I'm going with the Lions to win the NFC. And I think the Jaguars also showed a lot of progress. Coach Doug Peterson, Trevor Lawrence. I think year 3 in Trevor Lawrence, we saw year 3 of Jalen Hurts, like the leap that he made. And I think the Chiefs and Jaguars, that's going to be a rivalry for years to come. The AFC is loaded with young talent, but I'm just going to say the Jaguars get through. The Jaguars win their first ever Super Bowl and bring it down to Duval. It's going to be an epic parade, 31-28. And let's check back in a year and see if I was right.
And I'm just going to go next, Pratik, because I actually have the Jaguars winning the AFC as well. The NFC is a little bit tough. I don't know, like it's really hard for me to. I don't think it's going to be Philadelphia. I don't know, like it's kind of interesting, but like maybe I'll go out of the box a little bit because the 49ers seem like such a trendy pick. I'm going to say the Vikings, actually. I mean, like this past season, for example, the Vikings had a terrible defense, but they had a.
Why is Zujan laughing?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, here's the thing, right? The Vikings had such a bad defense, but their offense was good. So now that they upgrade their defense in the offseason, that's probably their number one priority, right? So I could see the Vikings, if they improve to like a 20th overall defense instead of being dead last. They were actually the worst defense in the league. So they really go up.
I was laughing because do you actually believe that primetime Kirk is gonna have like some big 180-degree turnaround in 2023? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, it's possible, right? Like Matthew Stafford, for the longest time, we didn't believe in him, right? To ever win a game, and he won a Super Bowl, right?
I mean, that is true, but Kirk Cousins hasn't really proved anybody like wrong per se. I mean, apart from like a few regular season games here and there.
Well, Matthew Stafford, okay, Kirk Cousins actually won a playoff game in 2019. He beat the Saints in New Orleans.
But right after that, they lost to San Francisco.
Right, but Matthew Stafford, by comparison, had never won a playoff game at all, right?
Matthew Stafford now has a Super Bowl.
Yeah, but prior to 2021, did you believe that he would get the job done, though?
I mean, they had a much more loaded offense with Cooper Kupp, Tyler Higbee, all that. You threw Stafford into like almost perfect system.
Okay, but here's the thing, right? You have Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen. I mean, that's a very good offense too, right?
Yeah, when they're all healthy. I mean, the Rams like had so many injury problems. I mean, yes, injuries are part of the game, Cooper Kupp was hurt, Stafford was hurt. I mean, that's part of the reason why the Rams were nowhere near.
No, but I'm talking about the start of 2021, right? So I'm basically, look, the idea is like, we didn't believe in Stafford, right, for the longest time, and then he got it done. So the idea is like, at some point with Kevin O'Connell, who I think finally got the Vikings to a pretty good state on offense. Like, I mean, look, it's kind of a wild card pick, but I mean, San Francisco had so many questions at this point. Like, truthfully, a lot of these teams have questions.
I
So-
still have a feeling that, I mean, is Purdy fever just going to be the Niners version of Zappy fever?
No, I mean, the difference is with Purdy, they got to the NFC Championship game. So I don't think it's simply more than just a fever at this point. I mean, they got to the NFC game with him as the quarterback, right?
I mean, Purdy's the real deal.
With Zappy, for example, it was like 2 games and then they lost, right? So
I mean,
Yeah,
he was
Billy
undefeated
Zappi's
as the
gonna
starter.
be. Yeah, Billy Zappi, that was fun, but at the very least, we can see him push Mac Jones for the starting spot next year, which is always a good thing. So I guess I'll go. I mean, NFC, I think, pretty wild. It's I mean, I feel like the whole thing's gonna be a wild card. I don't really see one team outside. I mean, I'll say this, that for the Cowboys, it's not a question of if, it's when they decide to just kind of throw the game away with very strange players and formations. I think this time they'll be able to keep their act together up till the Super Bowl. And then you're probably going to see some really lovely, like, run the ball with 10 seconds left on the clock, kind of like lovely playing. So I do see, given that the NFC has given a different team every year for the last couple seasons, I do see this year potentially being the year that Dallas finally makes it to the Super Bowl, throwback to the 90s. But I think they're going to actually come up against, I'm just going to say, I think they're going to come up against a rejuvenated New England Patriots football team. We're going to see this is a make or break year for Mac Jones. They have a lot of young talent, and lest we forget, one of the biggest free cap spaces heading into the off season. A lot of exciting young players to build a defense around, O-line around Cole Strange. Really depend. My prediction's banking on Mac Jones working out, which, I've already been pretty supportive of him, and I think he ended the season pretty good shape. And Bill O'Brien, maybe we can have one last gasp of the Bill Belichick magic in that partnership. And I see the New England Patriots beating the Dallas Cowboys to avenge the regular season loss last year. So I'm going to say Patriots win it, baby.
I will say this about the
Okay.
Patriots. I will just say this about the Patriots.
Okay.
Pratik, welcome back. A year-round predicted Patriots over Cowboys in next season.
Oh wow.
And Ujad and I, we have some disagreements over the Vikings, but it's just for fun. We do these picks, so I have no idea. Look, Ujad, you're right. Like, I don't believe entirely in Kirk Cousins, but the idea is sometimes you think out of the box and expect that maybe someone figures it out at some point. I don't know if he will, but anyways, what I just wanted to quickly say was like, one Super Bowl with Mac Jones, if the Patriots ever get to that state where they actually win a Super Bowl with Mac Jones, to me, that would feel so much more like happiness inside than the Super Bowls with Brady. Just because after Brady, like winning another Super Bowl with another quarterback would just feel amazing. So, I would love if that happens. I don't know if
I would say that it would be great from a fan's point of view, but it would just be even sweeter for Belichick. Brady's already won one without Belichick, and now Belichick could win one post Brady, like post the Brady Belichick era, if you will, right? So
add to that. Can you imagine how the Buffalo Bills
However,
would
Brady
hold
never-
on.
Belichick never beat
Wait.
Brady though.
Well,
Even if
that
that
was one
happens.
game. That was one game. But anyways, what I'm saying is, if the Patriots did win a Super Bowl next season, can you imagine how the Buffalo Bills will feel that the Patriots with Mac Jones won a Super Bowl before Josh Allen? That would be pretty funny. So,
Probably another reason that Brady retired was that he could go off knowing that he beat his old boss. If he stuck around longer, he risks potentially losing to him in the future.
I don't think that really made a difference for him. Brady's legacy at this point is intact as the GOAT. And Mahomes has a long way to go. He's on the right trajectory, but he's going to have to continue this play for the next 15 years. If he does it, then look, I'll be consistent and call him the GOAT, but he needs to at least get to 5 Super Bowls before that conversation even begins. He's at 2 right now, so he needs to at least get 3 more rings. Win 3 more Super Bowls, not get to 3 Super Bowls and lose.
Yeah, I think the real conversation is can Patrick Mahomes become the GOAT? Not is he the GOAT? The is he the GOAT is a way premature discussion.
Yeah, but can he get there? Sure. But we've seen it before with other quarterbacks, right? Just for reference, Ben Roethlisberger in 2008, in 4 seasons in the league, I think he had won his 2nd Super Bowl in 2008. he never won another Super Bowl after that. Obviously, Mahomes is a better quarterback than Roethlisberger was, but I mean, Roethlisberger only got back to one more Super Bowl 2 years later. And like probably the seasons when Roethlisberger was at his best, the Steelers didn't ever get back to a Super Bowl after 2010, even though they had some loaded offenses with Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster. They never got back. So it's just hard to get back. So we'll see. Mahomes has definitely defied the odds with getting to 3, but he still has a ways to go. And it'll be fun watching and seeing how this journey evolves over time. But yeah, that's sort of how I sort of look at it. Let's say all our predictions. I guess everyone gave their predictions. It'll be fun to see a year from now how these predictions look. But yeah, just
That's on to the NFL offseason.
Yeah.
However that plays out, and draft was, well, we'll see how the draft goes on like a couple of months or so. And of course, other sports are in full swing. So it's gonna be fun to be following those as well.
But yeah, just to all of our listeners, our followers, thank you for all the support you've given to us. It's been a lot of fun. Honestly, I never thought when I started this in 2018 as a simple blog that it would evolve to this, but this has been a really cool experience since 2018. So thank you all for supporting it and making this possible. So until then, enjoy the rest of your week, everyone. And definitely we hope to see you again at some point. Have a good one.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Peace.
Bye.
Yep.
Thanks.